Hello, everyone. A warm welcome to everyone to the security session of Infrastructure Security of Kubernetes in AWS. I am Disha Babla, Technical Account Manager with AWS. I would like to spend next couple of minutes or so to look at some of the best security use cases based on the experience of working with the numerous customers. So today, we are going to look at different aspects to consider when enhancing security to your EKS-based applications. We'll start with discussing about AWS Managed Container Service offering and take a look at AWS Shared Responsibility model. Then we will discuss some of the best practices around few key areas like identity and access management, host, container images, network, auditing, and data encryption, to name a few. We will wrap it up with a link to detailed guide on EKS best practices, including security for your future reference. These are the objectives. We're going to talk about understanding the various security best practices for running workloads on EKS. The target audience are application developers, DevOps, platform, and the SRE teams. Duration is 60 minutes, which includes the Q&A as well. Now, we'll have to take a layered approach to securing the containerized applications. So folks, there are mechanisms to secure the host on which the containerized applications run. Then comes the security as it pertains to the container images and its runtime, performing static analysis of both the application source code and that of its dependencies. We also have to consider things such as handling sensitive configuration, data loaded by the applications, and of course, proper handling user data that may contain the PII which are relevant in the non-containerized applications as well. The sensitive configuration, right? So multi-layered approach increases the security of a system as a whole. That's something we call it as a defense in depth. At AWS, security is the highest priority. We look after the security of the cloud, and the customers look after the security in the cloud. AWS responsibility, that is security of the cloud, includes protecting the infrastructure that runs all the services that are offered in AWS cloud. This infra is composed of hardware, software, networking, and facilities that run AWS cloud services. Let's take a closer look at what this means for Amazon EKS, to be very specific. So security and compliance are considered shared responsibilities when using a managed service like EKS. AWS is responsible for managing of the EKS managed Kubernetes control plane. That's why we call it as a managed control plane service. This includes the Kubernetes masters, the etcd database, and other infra necessary for AWS to deliver a secure and reliable service. As a consumer of EKS, if you are using a self-managed worker nodes, you are largely responsible for IAM, pod security, runtime security, network security, and so forth. In the upcoming slides, we'll observe that when it comes to the infrastructure security, AWS will assume additional responsibilities as you move from self-managed worker nodes to managed node groups and further to the Fargate. Fargate is something which is serverless. So Amazon EKS node group automate the provisioning and lifecycle management of nodes. When I say nodes, I'm talking about EC2 instances for your EKS Kubernetes clusters. With EKS managed node groups, you don't need to separately provision or register the EC2 instances, that provides you with the compute capacity to run your Kubernetes applications. Customers who are using the managed node groups are responsible for upgrading their node groups to the latest AMI via the EKS API, or with the help of a CLI or CloudFormation or even the console as well. Also, unlike Fargate, managed node groups will not automatically scale your infra or cluster. That, of course, can be handled by the cluster autoscaler or other technologies such as native AWS autoscaling. Or we can go ahead with the other AWS partner solutions as well. AWS Fargate, It's a serverless compute engine for the containers that work with the EKS or even ECS as well, that is Elastic Container Service. So Fargate makes it easy for you to focus on building your applications. And that is something that allocates the right amount of compute, eliminating the need to choose the instances and scale the cluster capacity. So as you can see with the Fargate, AWS becomes responsible for securing the underlying instances or the runtime that is used to run your pods. So AWS will also assume responsibility of keeping the EKS optimized AMI to date with Kubernetes patch version and of course the security patches as well. If you're trying to talk about diving deep into it, let's get started. Now, being very specific, what are the security benefits of AWS Fargate? Again, folks, you need to make a note of it. Underlying infra, you'll not have access and you'll not be able to manage it directly, right? So we get some built-in security benefits whenever we are using AWS Fargate. In short, some of the undifferentiated operational heavy lifting will be taken care by AWS. Patching for underlying OS and other processes like kubelet are of course taken care by Fargate. So each of your pod running on Fargate has its own isolation boundary and it does not share the underlying kernel or CPU resources or memory resources or even the elastic network interface, that is ENI, with the another pod. And that is something that enables your application to have workload isolation and improved security by design. However, we know that Kubernetes is a single tenant orchestrator. So Fargate cannot guarantee the pod level security isolation. In that case, you should run the sensitive workload or untrusted workloads that need complete security isolation using the separate EKS clusters, right? So Fargate removes the need to provision and manage the server, of course, where it lets you to specify and pay for the resources per application and improves the security through the application isolation by design. So you inherit the most comprehensive compliance control with AWS. So here AWS supports more security standards and compliance certification that any offering, including the PCI DSS, PPAP, or FedRAMP, GDPR, FIPS 140-2, and so forth. And that's something that helps the customer satisfy the compliance requirement for virtually almost every regulatory agency around the world. Now, let's jump into the best practices around the few key areas. We'll get started with the authentication and authorization. Now, when I talk about IAM, Identity and Access Management, this is an AWS service that performs two essential functions, authentication and authorization. So authentication involves the verification of an identity, whereas authorization governs the action that can be performed by the AWS resources. Within AWS, a resource can be another AWS service. For example, let's say EC2 or any AWS principal like IAM user or the role. The rules that govern the action that the resource is allowed to perform or no, or let's say if it's a deny, that is something that are expressed with the help of the IAM policies. That is the authorization part. Now, if you're running Kubernetes, either let's say yourself or either if you're running it via EKS, then you need to understand and configure both AWS IAM and Kubernetes RBAC. Remember, folks, in case if you're trying to talk about the Kubernetes cluster, the authorization of the KATS, in that case, understanding the RBAC concepts are very important. So with EKS and its required AWS IAM authenticator, we sign into the cluster with an AWS IAM identity, either an IAM user or IAM role. But Kubernetes decides what they can do there via the help of the RBAC, right? So one key thing to remember is that AWS auth config map. I'm repeating myself. AWS auth config map is used to create a statistic mapping between the IAM principals and IAM users and the roles and your Kubernetes RBAC groups, right? So in case I'll just pull out the pen. So here in this case, if you see, whenever a kubectl call is made, that is whenever it uses the Kubernetes API is made, kubectl call is made. Let's say I ran a command stating that, okay, I want to get the pods, right? So here in this case, my IAM identity is passed along with the Kubernetes call by our IAM Authenticator plugin, right? So on the back end, Kubernetes will actually go and verify your identity, IAM identity with AWS IAM. And that's something which is purely authentication, right? Once done, here in this case, the auth response is sent back to the Kubernetes, right? It's sent back to the Kubernetes, and the Kubernetes will go and check your RBAC permission. RBAC permissions are something that is defined inside your Kubernetes cluster, right? Once it is authenticated and authorized, of course, the Kubernetes API approves or denies the request, and result is something, I mean, it sends the results back, right? So once your user identity has been authenticated by IAM service, the Kube API server reads the AWS auth config map in the Kube system namespace, right? So let's talk about some of the best practices. Again, you can go through the slide well. However, as a general guideline, always use the least privilege while creating IAM and the RBAC rules. So for production, configure EKS cluster endpoint in the private mode, or let's say in other cases where you have dev or the test environment, either public or private, and private mode also can be used. Always remember to create a dedicated IAM role just for the cluster creation. Do not use the same role in your day-to-day operations or cluster for deploying application. Instead, we can create separate roles for the teams. For example, separate role for the developers. Apart from that, we can use dedicated IAM role with the least privilege or only the permissions that are required for that specific role. Now, the role that I'm talking about is nothing but your job role, as in as a individual or as an admin developer. What are the permissions required for that specific work to be done, right? So most of the times, pod do not need to access or query the EC2 nodes or IMDS, that is instance metadata service. So it's better to block the access to that service from the pod, right? So every pod will have a default service account through which it can access the API service. So in general, most of the pods focus on their business logic or function and may not need to access the Kubernetes API servers. So here in this case, we can disable the mounting services for the pods, right? Now, this is again very important talking about ECR. So here is something that you keep your container images. Remember folks, scanning your images before putting them into your deployment cycle is very important. In market, you'll be able to find many such alternative solutions. So ECR, that is Elastic Container Registry, it helps you to implement many of the best practices that we have again just discussed. So we can configure a ECR repository to be immutable to prevent image tags from being overwritten. So we can, let's say if I want to manually go and scan the images stored in ECR, I can do that. However, as a best practice, it's always recommended that you go and let your images be scanned automatically once they are being pushed. Just to give you all a brief of it, ECR is something that is constructed on top of Claire. It's an open source, project, CNCF project, right? So you can set up pull through cache rule to automatically sync an upstream container registry with your private ECR registry, right? And let's say if you want to go and delete the images, we can go and set the lifecycle policy, which contains one or more rules, right? Now we talk about the host security. So folks, these are again some of the best practices. For example, in case if we say for specifically for hosting your containers, we need to use the host that actually supports all the requirements and the dependencies, right? So we need to treat our infrastructure as immutable and automate the replacement of your worker nodes, right? And we need to minimize the accesses to the host. You need to deploy the host into the private subnet. So when I say private means, again, no one should have direct access from the internet to your this subnet resources that are hosted in this subnet. These are some more. Of course, you can go through it. You can take a pause and go through these host best practices as well. That's what we have discussed in the last one. Now, so let's say if your customer needs to harden the EKS AMI for CIS AL2 benchmark for the security and compliance, they can use the solution proposed in this article. Again, you will be able to find the blog as well here. So there are two ways to build EKS AL2 AMI for CIS AL2 benchmark. Number one, we can take the solution from the marketplace and add the EKS components, right? Again, this is the same approach that is being used here in this blog. Number two, we can write the script as well. And again, for that, we have many workshops, AWS workshops that are available, which can be a part of your immersion day in case if you are a AWS customer, right? So if the customer needs to harden their EKS AMI for, let's say, CIS Bottle Rocket, so benchmark for security and compliance, they can use this specific blocks for hardening their EKS AMI, right? Now, we'll proceed with the runtime security, folks. Now, for container runtime security best practices, please remember pods don't need to access host file systems, so do not allow any host path mounts. Privileged pods will have all the Linux capabilities as that of root of host, so avoid it, right? Apart from that, pods can have their own IP and only certain daemon set will use host networking, right? Unless it is required, drop all the Linux capabilities from the pods, right? Now let's look at the best practices around the network segmentation in EKS. So network security has, again, folks, several facets. So the first involves the application of rules which restrict the flow of network traffic between the services. The second one, if I talk about, it involves the encryption. When I'm saying encryption, I'm talking about the data encryption, of course, that is at rest and transit both. So the mechanisms to implement these security measures on EKS are varied, but again, it includes some of the common items. For example, traffic control with network policies, a security group. That means I need to have I need to use the firewall which is there at a subnet level as well as at an instance level as well, right? So encryption in transit I can achieve with the help of the service mesh. And at AWS, what we have is the app mesh. You can use the container network interfaces, that is CNI. You can use the Nitro instances as well. Apart from that, if I'm trying to talk about, let's say, the network policies, I can use the Calico agent. It's an open source policy engine from Tigera that works well with the EKS, right? Now, so again, this is a continuation of the need for native support for the network policies. Again, try to reduce the need to install any third-party plugins. Cost of support is something that we have heard from the customers. Pod launch latencies. Again, these are the other factors apart from security that we need to drive off, right? Adding on to this, what is exactly the eBPF? Right. So here, this is something that helps you to implement advanced traffic analysis, right? And analyzing your traffic at an application level, right? So here in this case, you have certain observability techniques and the networking techniques to understand what kind of a traffic you are, getting from your customers, or let's say from the world, right? And these are the continuation of our previous discussion, security group for the pods, right? So remember, whenever policies are scoped to a service account, it of course associates a set of ingress and egress rules with the service account, right? So pods are assigned a security group with the help of your security group policy CRD that you are writing in the manifest files, right? Next, what we have is the data encryption and secrets management, right? So this is quite self-explanatory. However, we need to understand that here in EKS as well, we are having a concept of envelope encryption. Now, what does this envelope encryption means? Let's say, for example, you have a plain text, all right? In this plain text, you would go ahead and encrypt this plain text with the help of a data encryption key, which we call it as a DEK, data encryption key. Further, we go ahead and encrypt this data envelope, a data encryption key as well with the another key that we call it as a customer master key, right? That's what is the concept of the envelope encryption, right? So for encrypting your data at rest, when I say encryption data means your data is either stored in EBS, EFS, and FSX for the lustre. That means that's what you're using for the EKS, right? So for that, you can utilize KMS, that is Key Management Service, where you can go and leverage the keys which AWS gives, or you can go and create your own customer master key as well. You want to import the keys, of course, that is also possible. For encryption in transit, you can use and import the certificate with the help of the ACM, that is Amazon Certificate Manager, right? You want to go ahead and rotate your CM keys periodically, of course, you can go and do that as well, right? So now these are the another part, that is the Kubernetes secrets, right? When I say Kubernetes secrets, that are used to store the sensitive information, let's say user certificates, passwords, or the API keys. So they are persisted in etcd at base 64 encoded strings. So on EKS, the EBS volumes for your etcd nodes are encrypted with the help of the EBS encryption, right? So on EKS, turn on audit logging and create a CloudWatch metrics filter and alarm to alert you whenever a secret is being used, right? So Kubernetes does not automatically rotate the secrets. I hope all of you are aware about it. If you have to rotate the secrets, we can consider using an external secret store. For example, at AWS, we have Secrets Manager, right? So the value of environment variables, again, that can unintentionally appear in the logs. So secrets mounted as volumes are instantiated as TMPFS volumes. That is a RAM backed file system that are automatically removed from the node when the pod is deleted, right? And at the last, a recommendation, we can leverage AWS Secrets Manager or SSM to store the secrets, right? Okay, so folks, this is the envelope encryption part that we have discussed already, right? Your encrypted secrets are stored inside the etcd, which is a part of your control plane of EKS. All right. Oops, I'm sorry. Let's go back again. Yeah, here we go. Right. So we can use the secret CSI driver and ASCP for managing the secrets in the secret manager service. So again, a blog is there written already for that. You can simply go ahead and search for the integrating the CSI drivers with your EKS, right? Now, this is the next part. So what are some of the recommended best practices of the network security? For example, I can get started with creating a default deny policy. So again, folks, as with RBAC policies, the network policies should adhere to the policy of least privilege access. So you can start by creating a deny all policies that restricts all the inbound and outbound traffic from a namespace, right? Or I can create a global policy with the help of Calico, right? Apart from that, we can log the network traffic metadata. For example, for that, I can use the AWS VPC flow logs and I can enable the flow logs at a VPC side, right? So here, these flow logs will capture the metadata from the traffic flowing through a VPC, for example, your source and the destination IP addresses, right? And port along with the accepted and the dropped packets, right? If you want to use the service group of AWS or take advantage of the network capabilities of open source, for example, let's say Cilium, you can use the same as well, right? Now, the next part that we have is auditing and logging best practices. So focusing on generation, monitoring, and alerting of event log data is utmost important from security perspective. So we can leverage AWS event log services to establish event log monitoring at the network, a host, and the container level. So we can enable the VPC flow logs to capture the network traffic. And on EKS, the audit logs are sent to Amazon EKS CloudWatch logs. So we can utilize these CloudWatch as a single pane of glass to monitor and alert on all the event log activities, right? For example, let's say for log routing, you can choose popular stacks like Elasticsearch or Logstash and Kibana, which we call it as ELK, or we can use the FluentBit or FluentD as well, right? Apart from that, your EKS works seamlessly well with the AWS partner products like Twistlock or Equa if you want to leverage them for logging and monitoring apart from the CloudWatch, right? Now, Control plane logging is something which is available, of course, for your EKS. The only thing is you have to go and enable them separately for different components. So these logs make it easy for you to secure and run your clusters. So we can start using EKS control plane logging by choosing which log types you want to enable for each new or existing EKS cluster, right? So we have 5 different types of logs available. Specifically talking, let's say if you want to cover API server, scheduler, authenticator, we have 5 different such type of log types that you have to go and enable, right? So with this, you can also integrate your EKS with the CloudTrail, which is, of course, a service that provides a record for action taken by a user or role, because we know, right? CloudTrail is an API call recorder. So CloudTrail will capture all the API calls for EKS, Amazon EKS as an events. So simple. We can go and create a CloudTrail and enable the continuous delivery of CloudTrail events to an S3 bucket, right? Further, if you want to go and analyze these logs, you can use Athena as well to detect any sort of an anomaly, right? And last, folks, we have the summary to again sum up this session. You have many responsibilities in running a secure container environment on the top of your AWS, that is EKS. So this is especially true. So this is especially true with regards to Kubernetes, as often it requires you to understand both the AWS platform and the Kubernetes platform, which includes where they integrate and where they don't, regardless of which you choose the key areas to focus. For example, IAM or network topology, all that you are able to see on the screen, right? What is in, what isn't in each container image that you want to run, right? As a key takeaway, folks, I would definitely want you to take a note of this a GitHub link. Again, it has all the details around the EKS best practices, right? I would encourage you to use it as your reference and also share your feedback as well with us. Like, how did you like this session? Any sort of questions, if you have, feel free to reach out to me straight away or put it in the Q&A or the channel that is being given. Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone, once again for being a part of this session. Would definitely like to thank the Cyberjitsu community to promote the cybersecurity across the folks globally. So I hope you all are enjoying the rest of the sessions as well. Have a good time and have a happy learning ahead, folks. Thank you so much.